We're so excited to kick off the summit this morning with our keynote speaker, Dan Hart, and it's going to take me a minute. You have a great bio, by the way, so I'm gonna read through his bio, but some of the work that he's been doing is really, again, creative and innovative in a world outside of our own. To hear what they've been working on as the president of Virgin Orbit. He leads Virgin Satellite Launch Company. The company's primary focus is delivery of small satellites and constellations to LEO, orbit around the Virgin's LauncherOne rocket, which is air-launched from Virgin Orbit's 747 named Cosmic Girl. Prior to this, Hart was the Vice President of Government Satellite Systems for Boeing Space and Intelligence Systems Division. In this position, he was responsible for all Boeing satellite programs for the USG and allied countries, including the Wideband Global SATCOM, Global Positioning System, tracking and data relay satellites, Payload Programs, Experimental Systems Group, and other government satellite programs. He was named to this position in December of 2013. Hart has held a wide variety of leadership roles in program management, engineering, and operations across Boeing's network and space systems unit. He has led teams in all phases of the product life cycle, from R&D through development, production, and flight operations, and has supported numerous space launch missions across manned space, satellite development, launch vehicle development, and missile defense. Prior to his current assignment, Dan served as the Vice President and Chief Engineer for Boeing Network and Space Systems. He was responsible for providing functional oversight for all engineering, technology development, and mission assurance activities for the 10,000 NNSSS engineers. It is my pleasure to welcome our keynote speaker, Dan Hart, President and CEO of Virgin Orbit.
Well, it's great to be here, everybody. It is terrific to be here in Long Beach. I've been a Long Beach resident for almost 30 years. It's great to be running a business here in the hometown. I'm going to, let's see, does this work? There we go. I'm going to be talking to you about our satellite launch system. It's an air launch system that comes off of a 747, who has a name of Cosmic Girl, which, by the way, we didn't name. It was her name when she was first commissioned, so it's sort of an interesting coincidence there. I want to talk a little bit about why we're here in Long Beach first. Virgin Orbit, which is one of the newest companies under Richard Branson's Virgin Group, which has a couple of hundred companies under it. And by the way, I spoke to Richard last night, and he says hi to everybody. Virgin Orbit looked around all over the place, was originally up in Pasadena, had a leg up in Mojave, and looked around the area for a place to be. And Long Beach really came out on top, and primarily because it's so centrally located. It's got such a great aerospace history, and the talent around of people who really made aerospace happen, dating back all the way, frankly, to World War II, and then up through the 60s and the space race, and up through the 70s and 80s and commercial space in the 90s. Really has such a great history and a great amount of talent pool that's here, and the universities in the area all really work well in the technology area. So it's sort of a nice ecosystem for a technology-based company to be. And so that's why we're here. I feel fantastic about being here in that I've spent most of my career in large compounds that are sometimes feel isolated from the community, and it's great to be part of the community. So let me talk to you a little bit about what we're up to. Our job is to get satellites a ride into orbit. And we have a novel, innovative approach to do that. We fly up on a 747 under the wing, and the rocket gets on location, drops down. About 5 seconds later, the engines ignite and takes the payload up to orbit. It's an interesting time to be in this business in that space is changing, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But the ability to put incredible capability in small packages has hit space. We all feel it in our iPhones and our smartphones. You know, everybody's been affected by the revolution in electronics and capabilities, and that's hitting satellites too. So satellites that used to maybe be the size of a small school bus, now you can put that functionality in something the size of a washing machine or a small refrigerator, or maybe a toaster oven, and any other appliance. So that's changing the way we think about space. Now, I'm going to go through a few charts with you now. You know, we spend a lot of time thinking about, and Richard really drives this into each of his businesses, of what effect do you want to have on the world? What's your purpose? What would the world look like? What's the difference between the world with your existence versus without your existence? And in our minds, that's where innovation has to start, with a strong purpose that drives a team together. So let me take you through space a little bit through the years. We've been functioning in space for about 55 years now. If you look at commercially what's happened in space, in 1964, the Tokyo Olympics was broadcast across the world by a little satellite called SYNCOM-2, which, by the way, was built up in El Segundo, and that changed the way we think about communications. And since then, through the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s, an enormous array of communication networks have been put up in space. A lot of them are regionally based, but they do connect across the world, and we use them routinely when we pull out our cell phones, when we use credit cards, when we get any data on the website. Routinely, we're using these satellites. In addition, satellites have, of course, changed the way we navigate. Most of us, if you're like me, don't know where we're going unless we're looking at this little screen that's telling us to turn right or left. And that's being brought to us by GPS satellites, for the most part, that are up there at about 11,000 miles. Additionally, we're using satellites to understand things like crop health, fertilization, industry density, sales in various areas. We're using it to certainly understand our planet and global warming or not, and pollution and ozone and rising of the seas. We're using it to understand severe storms and get ready and for preparation, as well as for communication systems that allow us to do emergency response and communications. We're using it in the military to understand where our adversaries are and where they're not. And so space has really grown hugely, but there's a problem. Just like the economies have grown everywhere else, it's uneven. And what space is doing now is, in some ways, it's amplifying the differences or the inequities that exist in the world. Okay, so the companies that put up bandwidth historically will put it up over the cities or the populations that have the most money to pay for it. And so you end up with things like the digital divide, where poor areas don't have enough bandwidth. And if you look at how applications have grown, you know, to really function, you need bandwidth. You want the video to come. The expectation is, you know, now it's video, soon it'll be virtual reality. And today, that's not where the bandwidth is unevenly located. Okay, it's more in the rich areas, and that will have the effect of amplifying the advantage. So what we're seeing also is there are a limited number of countries with launch capability. There's about 9 countries. There are also only about 4 to 6 large companies that do really big constellations of satellites and handle most of the communications. So a really small group have control over space. And then the other aspects is, politically, when we talk about earth science and other science and programs, political decisions have a huge impact on what we do in space. And you know, you hear that echoed, and wherever you are in the political spectrum, one set of years it may be serving your needs, and another set maybe not. So, you know, what we see is a need to break down those barriers, and that's where our system comes in. Because there's this incredible innovation going on in the space world where satellites can now be built very inexpensively. I mean, when I was working in space in the 90s, it would be maybe a $400 million, $500 million proposition to build a satellite and get it launched into orbit. And so you can imagine there were very, very few organizations that were willing to put up the money and take the risk and get some capability into space. Well, you know, what if that was divided by a factor of 20? And that's where we are today. So you can put together a satellite probably for a handful of millions of dollars, and with our system, you can get it up to orbit for another small number of millions of dollars, and you can have capability in orbit. What that does is it changes the game completely. So now organizations, entrepreneurs, countries, universities can band together and put up capability that years ago they never would have thought they'd get anywhere near. And that's changing the whole population of who can go to space. So our job is in Virgin Orbit is a concierge service for those small satellites. Right now, the satellites have been developed, but they still have to hitch rides on very big rockets, which go where and when the big satellite is ready to go. And so they can get a ride on a ride to space station, for instance, but then they're in a space station orbit, and if that's not their business plan, or if it's delayed or whatever, you know, they get impacted. So what we've done is we've built a rocket that can put up 300 kilograms to low Earth orbit for this hugely growing sector of the market that's going to change how space is done. And so what we're after is, let's see if this works. Well, here's our system again, and I'll talk about it a little bit more. So small satellites, custom-built rocket, changes the way we do space. You've seen that space, and we're all feeling what space does for all of us here, but our idea is put up more capability to change the way to improve life on Earth. And so whereas some of the other entrepreneurs in space are looking towards going to Mars or going to outer planets or going off of this beautiful planet that we have, the theme that we have, or the purpose that we have at Virgin Orbit, is how do we get capability in space that improves life here on Earth? Because it's the best neighborhood that we've found, frankly. So what we are looking to happen is when you have low Earth orbiting constellations of satellites, they evenly serve the Earth. So you start to see the Earth as a globe that is evenly served for communications and interconnectivity. So the digital divide goes away. The ability of universities and other countries to put up science and observation capability will change the way science is done, in that it'll be impossible to ignore data from space because it will be ubiquitous. I mean, there will be every handful of universities who want to get together and put a satellite into orbit will be able to do so. We'll also be able to put up the foundations for real logistics in space, FedEx in space, so that we can easily get satellites to orbit when they want. We call it orbit on demand. And really serve a whole array of customers. Our system also is portable. I mean, we're a 747. All of our ground equipment is on trailers. And so there are a number of countries that we talk to who would frankly like us to visit sometime and put a satellite of theirs into space. And so the idea is to democratize space. And all of that, you know, space and science has a habit of inspiring our youth. And I mean, that's another aspect that our team is very plugged into and very, frankly, inspired ourselves with. And so there's a lot of interaction with schools, STEM, and just the existence of capability from space, seeing launches happen, having engineers visiting schools and so forth, has the effect of really bringing the youth into the business. And that's good for the business, and it's good for the community. So we're here to democratize space for the benefit of life on Earth. That's who we are. That's our vision. That's our purpose. That's what drives our team and gets us to work early in the morning and keeps us there late at night. So what are we doing and where are we in this endeavor? Last week, we drove our first rocket out of our factory. Our factory is located at the north end of Long Beach Airport in one of the new buildings. So this is our first rocket. It's the Pathfinder rocket. It's currently hanging up in Mojave on this test stand where we'll be fueling it with real rocket fuel, liquid oxygen and kerosene. And it's a two-stage rocket. You can see the sort of the second stage there near that conical section in the front, and the rest of it is the first stage. And a rocket is a big fuel tank with serious engines on it. So we've got a 75,000 pounds of thrust in the back and about 5,000 pounds of thrust on the upper stage, and it has some good get up and go. We'll then be taking this rocket, splitting the stages apart and firing them each up in Mojave. We've been up there firing engines. We do all of our hazardous work up in Mojave where we have a team of about 45. Most of our 400 people are in our core location there by the airport. And then I don't have a picture of Cosmic Girl in here, but she's parked right there at Long Beach Airport. And thanks to Jess and the team for having us there. If you drive down Conant Street, you can see her smiling at you as you roll down the street. And as we were talking, it's a nice inspiration for the team to see her every morning. So that's these are the baby pictures. Just, we couldn't help just snap a few of them. We have a very proud team. We have a great team of young folks who are new to the industry. We have a fair amount of folks who came from other new space companies. There's a couple of other companies in the area, and we have a sort of a unique brand with a lot of energy coming from the new space sector, and also a lot of really great themes coming from the Virgin Group and how Richard sees companies and how he values people and he values the purpose. And then we have people like me who have been in the industry for a while, and it's really great having new ideas coming in as well as proven processes and disciplines coming together, and it's a nice mix. And then we have people from other industries like the auto industry, Silicon Valley, other industries local in the area, and other Virgin Group companies that help us with the overall spirit. So it's a great team. What I thought I would do is, let you hear directly from them. So I brought a little video, and you can hear a little bit about the energy and the ideas and the thought and the spirit from the team we have right here in Long Beach. Okay. Or I could sing a song. If there's any requests. Okay, I'm going to start it again. There we go. Sounds like we've got some serious.
The fact that I get to do cool things, make the world a better place, and I get to work on space stuff, that's really inspiring for me. It's a great reason to get out of bed every day.
We work in an incredible environment, right? You only have to take a step out onto the shop floor and see why this place is unique.
So what is Virgin doing differently? We're trying new technologies. We want to make a rocket that even a Wernher von Braun would be surprised to see.
What stood out to me the most was the fact that this company is willing to take those non-traditional approaches to what we've done in the past, and that's just going to change the space industry.
For the past 50, 60, 70, 100 years, it's been done this way.
We don't have to partake in what's considered status quo.
mean, you guys know about the carbon fiber tanks, right? And the way the flight computer is done and some of the software choices we made very early in the program. Never been done before, things that showed to be successful and are now really showing the fruits of their labor.
What we're focused on right now is printing some of the hardest parts of the rocket engines. Definitely save orders of magnitude in time and cost from the way that we're manufacturing our rocket engines today.
You know, that's a huge innovation in simplicity, in design, and simplicity is what we're looking for.
The best things at Virgin is the culture here and the ability to make decisions. And the thing that affords is the ability to move very rapidly and then improve the design of the vehicle and field it as quickly as possible.
Like you come into a company like this and you think, there's nothing like this. There really isn't.
I think Virgin is really about the people. They're really what make this community and what make this company work.
To be around some of the smartest people on Earth building rockets, it's pretty inspiring.
We put a lot of effort into bringing our talents out in each other.
But you've got a lot of freedom to do the right thing the way you know how.
I definitely feel like I'm part of a family. It's not just a team, it's a family.
You want your people to be happy. That's really why I picked Virgin. People want to be here and people want to see small sats go to space.
It's a unique solution because we're their dedicated ride to space.
Technology keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller. It's enabling much greater access and ability for everyone to have their hand on something in space.
Doing things in space, we can make things happen here on Earth in a global way, and it's changing the world for good. I think this team is contributing in a big way.
Well, yeah, every kid loves space, but you know, you get older and you're like, what are the odds that I'm going to be working in the space industry, you know?
Great to be in the space industry. It is great to be in Long Beach, and it's an even better combination. So thank you very much.